Heroes run into danger when others run away, and Isabella Nash was a hero. And the thoughts of this parliament and her work colleagues, her friends, her partner, her family and her injured colleague Leah Drew are with her, and I join the Minister in his comments from this morning. I'd also like to place on record the hurt currently being felt following another tragedy in the Wide Bay. The loss of 3 innocent lives, 17-year-old Kelsey Davies, Michaela Chandler, who was 29, and a brave nurse, Cherie Robertson, 52 years of age, following a shift. Kayla Behrens, who remains in hospital. I visited Maryborough following that tragedy, and I wanted to listen, and I wanted to feel what that community was feeling. And time again, the call for real reform rang true. Queenslanders want to know that something will change. And there was another question being asked, and it's one that I've heard across this state, and it is, where is the Premier? As were the brave victims the other day who put aside their emotion and their pain to sit on a panel for the Today Show and tell their stories. This was the Premier's chance to listen to people who have lost loved ones, who have had the most incredibly difficult experiences in their homes, in their cars, and the people in that room were asking, where is the Premier? There is a helplessness seeping into Queenslanders buckling under the crime crisis, and I want to offer them hope. I want them to know that it doesn't have to be like this. And I urge members in this place to leave this precinct and go and listen to people in small and family business and people in their homes. Listen to people who have had their cars stolen and let them tell you about the impact on that emotionally, the disconnection from getting to work, the financial implications. Listen to people who have experienced violent assaults in the street and are afraid to go out. Listen to people who are debating where to leave their keys in their own house. Should they put them under their pillow in the hope that an offender doesn't find them, or should they leave them at the front door so that someone who breaks into their home doesn't have to go through their kid's bedroom before they get to theirs? They are not debates Queenslanders should have to have. And this morning, the comments from the government were out of touch. The attorney who said the outcome is showing good signs. The Deputy Premier who spooked that the laws were working. Go and listen to Queenslanders, and they are not saying those things. The RACQ called it out. We are the crime capital of the country. The images of young offenders ramming police cars. There was a time in this state when young offenders ran from the police. Now they run at them. How have we got to that stage? Offenders hanging out of a car, attempting to hit golf balls at police engaging in a low-speed pursuit. How did we get here in Queensland? But the real embarrassment today was the Minister for Police. He wouldn't answer a simple question: are there more or less full-time equivalent frontline police today in Queensland than 2 years ago? And if the workforce data had been released, the Minister wouldn't have to duck and dive because it would show it in black and white. The government is walking away from a commitment to add 1,450 personnel, people on the ground, actual. You don't have the ability to dial 000 and select an approved officer and dial in the time when they might be able to get to you. That doesn't work. It only matters if they are full-time, frontline equivalent officers. And that has been the metric this government has always used. But as opposed to delivering on their commitment, the government is now rewriting history. Queenslanders are not going to cop the Palaszczuk government's spin when it comes to police numbers. And for the government to now be walking away is a dead-set cop-out. It is a cop-out. The commitment was made, and the government is so far from meeting this commitment, it is going backwards at a time when Queenslanders have never needed frontline officers more. The government is not listening, and when governments stop listening to Queenslanders, Queenslanders stop listening to governments. And we have put our solutions on the table, and we continue to do so, and it starts with consequences for actions, putting the victims ahead of young criminals. It looks like unshackling the judiciary, removing this nonsense of detention as a last resort, and it looks like gold standard early intervention to properly fund, resource and reform and turn kids around before they're holding a knife at someone's throat and before they're ramming police cars just trying to do their job. And the Premier continues to say that this parliament voted on the laws. Well, the Premier had a chance to unshackle the judiciary, and she chose to back the UN over Queenslanders. And Queenslanders living in fear won't forget that. Mr Deputy Speaker, the government has blamed everyone but themselves. The police, the magistrates, parents. When young offenders come from a home under the care of the state, it's very difficult to blame the parents. The government is unwilling to accept responsibility on any of the crises that are unfolding in this state because of a failure of frontline service delivery. And in Gladstone, we gathered in a park just last week where for over 300 days women haven't been able to have a baby where, when and how in a city that they live of 60,000 people. We listened to the mothers. I attended. The Shadow Health Minister attended. The neighbouring MP attended. We didn't dismiss it as a stunt. We listened. Where was the Premier? Where was the Health Minister? Where was the local member? Again, more Queenslanders asking, where is the Premier? And so it is with housing. We're in the middle of one of the greatest cost of living crises this state has experienced. The government calls the summit, admits it's their responsibility, and then fails to deliver on the signature policy. A policy to ensure dwellings that were already built, that already had trees surrounding them, could come online and deliver homes for the most vulnerable. But it took 6 months, $2 million, many committees, and still Queenslanders live out of their cars because of a government that just simply cannot plan and deliver things. Mr Deputy Speaker, whether it's health, whether it's housing, whether it's the management of national parks, whether or not it's asbestos in our schools, or whether or not it is law and order, Queenslanders are suffering from a crisis in the delivery of frontline services because of a government that, after nearly a decade in power, has lost the right to govern because it has stopped listening to Queenslanders. This government is in chaos. This government is governing from crisis to crisis. Queenslanders are demanding solutions to the cost of living pressures they are facing. They are demanding solutions to the health crisis that is seeing ambulances ramped and people stuck at the end of a waiting list just to get on a waiting list, and for young mums to be able to have a baby where they live. They are being stuck at the end of a queue for social housing, and they are being stuck in their homes waiting for reform to law and order and more police that were promised. And overall, Queenslanders are asking, where is the Premier?